Before we get into the how-to mechanics of starting your own law firm, let's ask the harder question. Should you even do it? Today, my guest is Fahim Rahman, and we're going to jump into the traits and personality style that we think you need to start a law firm in 2025. Before we're talking about the money and the steps we need, let's go and talk about the characteristics you're going to have before you want to start your law firm. So again, as always, my guest today is my esteemed colleague, Fahim Rahman.
Hey, how's it going?
Fahim owns an employment law firm here in California. He's been practicing law for close to 5 years now. Is that right, Fahim?
Yeah, 5 years. Yeah.
Sweet. And Fahim and I are both co-founders of Casely.ai, where Fahim is a CPO and I am CEO. So, Fahim, let's go ahead and jump right into it. What is the number one thing you need to start your law firm?
Honestly, the number one necessary thing I think has to do with nothing that's material, but it's really an attitude. And a mentality. I think the most important thing is actually like willingness to fail, because you can't be afraid in thinking that, oh, I'm gonna, what if I mess up? What if I can't do it? I think the biggest question, the most important question that one should ask themselves, if you're going into any kind of business, not only, a law firm, is, are you willing to fail? The answer varies from people to people, because, some people have more riding on failure than others. For example, if somebody is the sole breadwinner of a family or has small children that's dependent on them, that would make it harder to answer that question in a positive way or an affirmative way, saying, yes, I am willing to fail, because you're worried about your children, your significant other, how are you going to run your family, because life is really expensive. But yeah, I think that's the number one thing that somebody needs to open up their own firm.
So I kind of want to drill into this. So when you were starting your firm, how long has it been now? Like 2, 3 years that you've been in a solo?
So it's been about 3 years and 6 months.
Awesome. So like in your experience there, like what does willingness to fail mean? Like, how did that look like for you tangibly?
Yeah, so basically, when I started my firm, I told myself, look, I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep my firm alive for the next 2 years. Like, I'm just not going to give up for 2 years. And so, whatever I needed to do to keep my firm alive, to keep the lights on, I did. And, I said, after 2 years, I'll make a decision. Like, if I can't figure it out in 2 years, then I'll go back and get a job. But I gave myself 2 years to make all the mistakes, learn from my mistakes, and, and then hopefully I come out the other side. And one of the other things that I learned was really the value of humility, because, the first question is, willingness to fail. And the second step, and the third and the fourth and the fifth, is failing over and over and over again. And I failed, many times. I've lost cases. I've had clients mad at me. I've messed up a case. Just things that's just gonna happen when you start your own firm, and you just gotta like be able to just kind of like power through that and learn from your mistakes, and really kind of research like what I did wrong, what I can do better. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, 100%. And actually, one thing that I think is super powerful in my personal life has been that kind of arbitrary goal setting. Like, I'm just going to turn my brain off for the next milestone, right? And so in your case, you picked like 2 years. Like, I'm going to do this for 2 years before I even think about finding another job. Where did 2 years come from? Why did you select that?
So I don't know, like in a lot of the reading I did, it seemed, in some of the business books, it just seemed like a natural like meter point, like a milestone to you can that like like usually I read that like the first year is full of making mistakes, and then the second year, like the mines to avoid, the pitfalls to avoid. And so I was like, okay, I think 2 years is enough. But funny enough, it actually wasn't. At the end of my 2 years, I was not doing too well in financial. I had just lost like the biggest trial of my career, and I was kind of financially in a precarious spot. But at the end of the 2 years, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. You know what I mean? Like I could see just over the hill. I could see that I'm on the path. And so in actuality, it did take me, I would say about 3 years to really figure it out. But after 2 years, I could see that I'm on the right path, but I'm like limping along, nursing some wounds. But just making that goal, I was able to kind of like, reevaluate at the end of 2 years. And I think that was what was really important.
And so you mentioned like once you kind of set that milestone, you know that there's going to be lots of failure there. So surely like in those 2 years, you had some wins, you had some like failures. Like, what were those lessons in those times where you failed? Like, did you realize like, oh, actually, I shouldn't have taken that particular approach. Now going forward, I'm going to change. Do you have like an example of maybe sometime that you went out, you had a failure, that you kind of learned something from there?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. 2 years is a long time to consistently screw things up, and so the first thing that I learned, and I kind of mentioned this the last time. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but when I started this firm, I was kind of a general attorney. I would do anything, any practice area, and it was just a really really hard way to make money because you have to keep if you care about your clients, you have to constantly teach yourself a new practice area every time you get a client in a new practice area. And so one of the biggest lessons that I learned was to focus into one practice area that I knew best, which was employment law. So that was one big lesson. And then the second, or one of the other lessons that I learned, or failures that I had to do with like fee structuring. So I experimented with different types of fees. Lawyers get paid in one of three ways. One is flat fee, two is hourly billable, and three is a contingency. So in the beginning, I experimented with hourly billing. I had some cases where I was defense. I was defending somebody in a lawsuit, and defense always gets paid hourly. And so one of the one of the mistakes that I made is the choosing your clients properly, because if they're paying you hourly and they don't have money, you're not going to get paid. So I had a couple of cases where I worked really hard for the client, and at the end of the month, she just, she was like, "Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't pay you." And so, that I was like, "Wow, that is going to be rough.
Yeah.
It's going to be a rough month." So that was when I was like, okay, maybe I should change to some sort of other type of fee structure. And that's when I learned, then I tried doing contingency work, which comes with its own challenges where you have to like float the costs until you resolve the case. But yeah, that was another lesson that I learned.
Yeah, I can't wait to we actually get into those like tactics and strategy of things like managing cash flow when you change your business model. But yeah, I mean like clients not paying, losing a trial, which I'm sure you invested a lot of time and money into.
Oh yeah.
Those are tough things to kind of bounce back from. So yeah, like what was your kind of crutches? Like how did you deal with those while you were starting up your law firm and figuring things out?
Well, you kind of, you really got to just like roll with the punches, right? And the other thing that I think you really need, aside from, humility, willingness to fail, is just the persistence, right? You gotta keep going. Like I said, I had that timeline of 2 years where I was like, you know what? Whatever happens, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make my firm survive for 2 years. And sometimes that meant, doing contract work. So I would do contract work. And contract work, when it comes to for lawyers, is basically another attorney has a case, and he either doesn't have the bandwidth or he doesn't want to do it, so he'll hire another attorney just to do the get in the weeds, write motion, do discovery. And you can make like you get paid as a contract attorney by the hour. So I started off as, I think I reached out to some bar associations. It was like, hey, I'm Fahim, I'm solo, I'm available for contract work if you guys have any overflow work that you guys can't handle. So I reached out to my network that way, and I started out at, I think, $80 an hour, which sounds like a lot, but it's really not when it comes to attorneys. And we have our own expenses. We have to pay bar dues, pay for legal research stuff. So it's really not that much money because of the overhead that we have. But yeah, that's something that I did. And as I kept doing contract work, my rate increased. So, the next job I would charge, 100, the next job, 120, 150, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah, that was one of the ways I was able to really keep the lights on.
Gotcha. Awesome. Yeah. And so not just like kind of reality hitting you in the face with these these kind of situations like having to do contracting work while also building up your firm. One thing I think as entrepreneurs that happens a lot is there's a lot of negativity just from like friends and family, right? Who would know that you can do better outside, right? Like just at this time and place today, like why don't you just get a job, right? You could make so much more money instead of grinding for $100 an hour. You could go to a big firm and start at $500, $600 an hour. Why not? Maybe I don't know if that was true for you. Did you have like friends and family saying like, "Why don't you go down this route?" Like, how did you stay focused when maybe people were doubting, this kind of entrepreneurial path you're going down?
Yeah, the thing is, like, entrepreneurship is really not for everyone, and not everybody gets it. And the thing is something that I've learned in my life is that everyone wants to see you do well, like your friends and your family. But the truth is, they don't want you to see you do too well. They don't want to see you do better than them, and that's just it's just an unfortunate truth of life. And so one thing that you kind of have to develop is thick skin. Business is not for the faint-hearted. Like there were some tough times. I would tell everybody that is thinking about going into any kind of business for themselves, but especially in a firm, like if you're going to have your own law firm, like the highs are higher and the lows are lower. It's really an emotional roller coaster. And so, I had, plenty of family saying, "Hey, like, what are you doing? You could go, make 120, $150,000 working at a firm, and here you're like, struggling to put together a few bucks to pay your bills, racking up credit card debt." But the thing is, like, if you've done any kind of reading about entrepreneurship or any successful people, I feel like it's necessary to go through the mud. That's what I call it. Like, you got to go through, you got to slog through the lowest of the lows, and then you kind of learn and get better, get more efficient, and then you kind of come out the other side, stronger for it. Uh, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, 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 100%. So like, there's a lot going on, especially when you're starting up, right? 0 to 1 is always the hardest thing I think with business. You said like persistence a few times, so I'm just like kind of want to double click into that. Like, I think everyone understands like you got to have thick skin, you got to be tough, you have to be persistent. Maybe we can like speak a little bit like directly and tangibly about that. Like, what really got you going? What kept you going? Where did that persistence come from?
So, at the same time that people were telling me to go get a job, my friends and my family, and I was very close to doing it. I was gonna be like, what, a couple of months where I would just really like kicked in the teeth, by by life and business. I was just like, maybe they're right. Like, maybe I'm just not cut out for it. So what I did was like I went and I got some differing opinions, right? I got a second opinion. So all the people, something that I realized, that all the people that are telling me to go get a job have jobs. And so I went to go talk to some other attorneys that have their own firms, my former boss, another solo that I did contract work with. And I was kind of telling them my experience. And they were like, "Yeah, we went through that. You either get through it or you don't. And if you don't, then you go back to getting a job." So that was kind of like, I found those people that were kind of like where I wanted to be in the future. Their opinions I gave more weight to, because that's what I wanted to be, right? I wanted to be a successful firm owner, not necessarily working at a firm. And so that kind of like strengthened my resolve.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I think an interesting thing here is like a dichotomy of like being persistent and just being stubborn. Because you do have to learn, right? Like for example, if you're just stubborn and saying like I'm just gonna keep billing hourly, right, and just kind of keep going down that route, you may not have never found more success with doing contingency work. So how did you kind of balance being persistent and just trying to keep your head on a swivel and understand like actually what's happening with my business? Like what are the skills I learned? What do I need to change?
Yeah. So the thing is, like, different things work for different people, right? And so you have to really kind of take stock of like who you are as a person and your strengths and your experiences, which kind of feed into the type of clients you get. Now, if, for example, if I was somebody else, let's say my network was full of, I don't know, like startup owners, right? They would be willing to pay hourly and have the ability to pay hourly, and I would be able to do that, right? I would be able to have my own firm and charge an hourly rate. But the thing is, that's not who I am. I don't have those kind of people in my network. And so, plaintiff's work made more sense to me because one, I had worked at a plaintiff's firm before, and two, when people like your clients on contingency, they're giving you they're not giving you money that they have at the moment, right? Basically saying, you know, because I take a percentage at the end, it's not a real number for them. So when you say, when you say, like, I'm going to take 30%, 40%, if I give, if I get something for you, and if I don't, you don't owe me anything, I bear the costs. People are more likely to take that deal.
Interesting. Yeah. That's super insightful. So, I kind of want to maybe wrap up this thread here on like the traits you need to start a firm. Um, Summarizing kind of this whole conversation, like if you were like, speaking to Fahim 3 years ago, what are you going to tell him to maybe get successful in a year and a half, get more successful, have less anxiety and stress going through the process? What would that takeaway kind of be?
I think the number one thing would be don't give up, persistence. Second would be, don't be afraid of failing. And then third would be humble enough to learn from your failures. And the fourth would be develop thick skin and don't listen to people that are telling you not to do this.
Awesome, man. And I appreciate that parting advice. So as we wrap up here, like, do you have anything you want to let the folks know about? Where can they find out more about Fahim Rahman or the work you're doing?
Sure, yeah. I have my website at rahmanlaw.com. Again, I'm a plaintiff's employment attorney, and I pay referral fees. If any attorneys want to send me any cases, I'll send. If I sign them, I'll send you a referral fee, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. And then over on my end, as always, if you're interested, if you are a plaintiff attorney yourself and you want to check out what we're building, what Fahim and I have been working on, just go ahead and check out casely.ai. You'll find out everything there. Go and take a look at the rest of our channel. Like and subscribe. Stick around for more, but I appreciate you all tuning in. Till next time. See ya.
So yeah, thanks.